Tar Heel fans breathing a sigh of relief this morning because North Carolina now officially headed to the first round of the NCAA tournament.
The Heels won their play-in game last night against San Diego State. Joining us now to talk about that game and all things March Madness is Isaac Shade from the Locked on Tar Heels podcast. Good morning, Isaac. Thanks so much for getting up early and joining us this morning. We have some questions for you. Of course, there was that controversy with UNC even getting into the tournament. Do you think that win over San Diego State, did that silence the critics?
I actually think it doesn't silence the critics. One of the things we often say about the NCAA tournament, and including teams or not, is that we have to be able to hold the results of these play-in games and the decision to include a team or not. We have to be able to hold those independent from one another, because their resume and what they've done doesn't necessarily mean or not mean that they're going to win or lose a game. So I wouldn't say had Carolina lost, I wouldn't think we should say, see, the committee had no clue what they were doing, including the Tar Heels. Similarly, I don't think we should say, see, the committee knew exactly what they were doing and they're justified in including Carolina because of matchups and the way they all go. But North Carolina does win this game. There will be people who will try to say, see, that silences the critics, but the critics won't want to hear it.
Is there anything they can do at this point to silence those critics?
Just keep winning. Ultimately, what happens is people look at what you've done. They look at your resume. They look at your predictive metrics, which is part of what we call the team sheets that determine whether the teams get in or not. And so, no, the critics will not be silenced. They will continue to defend their position. The problem is they're not looking at the full resume of these things. And so, no, the critics will not be silenced. And so as long as North Carolina keeps winning, it will maybe make them look a little bit silly.
All right, you talked about predictive measurements. Let's talk about who they're going to be facing on Friday. Ole Miss. What do you like about the Tar Heels facing the Rebels, and what are your thoughts on this?
Well, this is a game, funny enough, even though the Tar Heels are the lower 11 seed coming into the field to play Chris Beard's Rebels team, the 6 seed, North Carolina is actually the early favorite to win this basketball game. Why? Because North Carolina has been playing so strong lately, with their only 2 losses in the last 11 games coming at the hands of their bitter rivals down the road in Durham, North Carolina, the Duke Blue Devils. North Carolina is playing at a high level. They have finally found themselves, and that's what we often see with teams now in this era of the transfer portal. It takes teams a while to find themselves. And so this North Carolina team is a team that can absolutely go on a run to beat Ole Miss and maybe others down the road like Iowa State, who would be shorthanded. There's also historic precedents for it. This is the 14th season of these play-in games, and in 12 of the first 13 seasons with the play-in game, the winner of that game has gone on to win at least one more NCAA tournament game 12 times, and VCU in 2011, UCLA in 2021 went all the way to the Final Four from this play-in round. So there is precedent for Carolina continuing this path.
Yeah, you laid out their path right there. Well, besides the Tar Heels, though, who is your upset to watch in this tournament?
Oh, man, there are lots of them. There are always so many that we are rife with. One that I really, really like is in a 3-letter game, I've been calling it. VCU, the 11 seed, over BYU. This VCU team is very strong, led by Max Shulga, who is a high conference, like a high major player level, like ACC capability, almost transferred to Villanova this year. Another that I really like is Colorado State. I think they can spring a nice upset, and they've been playing very well lately, have won 10 straight games coming out of the Mountain West Conference, led by Neek Clifford, who is an NBA caliber player. That is another game that I'm watching.
You mentioned this earlier, but let's go back to the Lady Hoops, because as you said, the Lady Heels and Duke could be in the meeting in the Sweet 16 because they are in the same region. Do you think that either of them has the chance at beating South Carolina?
Oh, man, that's so tough. Coach Don Staley and the Gamecocks are a phenomenal basketball team. One of the problems for either the Tar Heels or Blue Devils, should they get to that matchup, is that Coach Staley was less than pleased, can I put it that way, with the Gamecocks seeding and seeing another team, UCLA, get that top seed above them. The Gamecocks are going to be rearing to go. Here's the thing. It's sports. Anything can happen on the court. Either the Tar Heels or Blue Devils could pull that game off. They split in the regular season, each winning on their home floor, but it's going to be a tall task against South Carolina.
All right, going to put the pressure on you. Who do you have in the end, cutting down the nets, both men's and women's side?
On the men's side, I've been on the Auburn train all season long. This team has dominated a historically strong SEC conference that got an NCAA tournament record, 14 teams into the NCAA tournament, higher than the Big East previous record of 11 back in 2011. They have stumbled a bit down the stretch, losing 3 of their last 4, but Bruce Pearl's squad is very, very strong. On the women's side, I got to go with some chalk there too, but I'm going to go with USC and the Trojans. Juju Watkins is a phenomenal basketball player. I was on set with Monique Billings this past weekend, who is a UCLA legend, plays in the WNBA right now, and she said, Isaac, I hate to do it. I'm a UCLA alum and a legend, but I'm picking USC. I got to trust Monique and roll with the Trojans.
I can't believe you didn't say South Carolina.
I know, right? All right.
All right. Isaac Shade.
Apologies.
The Locked On Heels podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. We certainly appreciate your insights.
My pleasure.